Welcome to our City Council workshop. We will not be taking public comment during tonight's workshop. Public comment can be addressed either to directly to our administrator Heather Hunter's email, or it could be sent to publiccomment@lewistonmaine.gov. Thank you for joining us, Administrator Hunter. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. Tonight, we're going to start on page 13. We start with the miscellaneous revenues. And the first one, this is by kind of subsection or category that we use. And the first one happens to be interest and taxes. We have a decrease there of $6,000. We are projecting excise tax to be flat this year. I think when I published not only the FY22 kind of summary report for the fiscal year and as well as the semi-annual report, we saw some of the trends with the excise tax kind of slowing down, considering the clip that it was on for a number of years, I think that's kind of attributed to two things. One is the vehicle inventory shortage, and I think the other component is with the rising gas prices and some other costs that you're not seeing the new cars being purchased as well. So we went conservative on that. The other line item that was impacted in this particular category is interest on delinquent taxes, decreased by about $9,600. The state sets the rate that the municipalities are allowed to charge. That rate has slowly declined over the last 3 years. So FY21's was 8%, FY22, the current year, is 6%. They set FY23's at 4%. So obviously that plays a role in our budget and revenues that anticipated to come in. License and permits, which is the next category. It's at the bottom of page 13 and extends to page 14. We have an increase of about $38,000 or 9%. That increase occurred in other licensing, electrical licensing, excavation permits, and the motor vehicle registrations. So even though the excise tax is down, the number is staying quite where it should be. So those range from like $20,000 to $2,000 to $16,000, which offset the decrease in food service licensing of about another $6,000. This is the second year in a row we're projecting kind of decreases in that category. Hopefully now that COVID, knock on wood, is behind us, we'll see that turn around in the future. And then we also had a decrease in the amusement licenses of about $4,000. Intergovernmental revenues had an increase of $197,127. The leader of the pack in this category is revenue sharing at $225,000. The final estimates by the state are now published, so we will be changing this estimate for the good. So we are anticipating to get more revenue than is what is reflected in this budget. We just don't know the accuracy, so we'll still be somewhat conservative with that estimate. We also saw a slight nudge up in the highway funds by about $14,500. General assistance decreased by $37,800, which represents the decrease in anticipated expenditures. The state reimburses 70% of qualified expenditures. So if this line item is going down, the overall budget is going down in general assistance, and we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. We are also estimating right now the air park tax reimbursement, our portion of the sphere of control or sphere of influence, if you will, to decrease slightly by $4,000. That is highly contingent upon the activity around the airport, as well as the tax rate that the City of Auburn sets. Charges for services decreased by $13,540 or 2%. As a reminder, last year for the council, we had some significant reductions in the parking revenues. We talked when I first presented the budget, that we are continuing that trend, unfortunately. So the charges for service in this particular category reflect the meters and the daily parking rates. So we're anticipating the daily parking rates to drop by about another $5,100. And then the other impact was the apartment building trash program dropped by about $8,500. Fine and forfeitures, and again, we're on page 16. That had a decrease of $6,350 or 5%, and that's pretty much all in code violations in the anticipation of that. That doesn't mean the issuance of code violations is down. It's just that's a very cash-sensitive line item. So it may take years, it may take agreements with the property owners. So it's highly volatile that we do not budget based upon violations issued, but violations that are actually paid. Under interest and rents, we had a decrease of $68,410 or 6%. Again, this is the remaining category that is impacted by parking. These are the monthly parking fees in this category that dropped by another $63,000. The decline in the interest rate market has forced a decrease in the investment earnings of about $14,400. And then we had a small drop in franchise fees of just shy of $2,800 or $2,900. And that's based upon the number of people that are signing up for Cablevision and so forth. And as most of you may be aware, that there's slowly the trend to DirecTV, the streaming and so forth, that not as many cable subscriptions are out there. We did have an increase, if you look at all of the municipal properties, from the armory to the other facilities and so forth. Since all the public buildings are back open again, we are looking at a total increase amongst all those line items of just shy of $12,000. So it's nice to see at least that revenue's turning the corner. Miscellaneous revenue had an increase of $6,660 or 5%. This year, we are planning on doing some timber harvesting, so we have that line item at $10,000. As a reminder, a part of the Forestry Board ordinance, the Forestry Board gets 10% of that, or $1,000 for that. So that piece goes to support the Forestry Board and their endeavors. The general fund will be able to keep the remainder of that. With this particular line item increasing this year, we did put in the fund balance request to purchase more trees than we normally would because we had that additional money. So it's kind of like we're harvesting some to reinvest in additional plantings. The Mariner Tower rent has an escalator built into that agreement, so that rose by about $3,800. And then that offsets the decrease in unclassified revenue of about $7,000. The unclassified revenue fluctuates wildly depending on what's going on from year to year. Last year, we did not have the insurance rebate from Maine Municipal Association. This year, we received a smaller rebate than we normally get, so that's taken a toll on that particular budgetary line item. Questions on revenue? This is probably the one area that we're going to go back through. By the time we finish the budget discussions, we'll be 75% through the budget. We'll be able to look a little closer and see what line items perhaps can be tweaked a little bit more.
Question is.
Yeah, one second, Councilor Scott. You said we're now getting potentially more money from the state for revenue sharing?
The estimates are now out, yes.
Okay, how much more is that then?
We tend to use about a 75% confidence level when we're looking at that.
Okay.
And so it's probably another $1 to $2 million.
Okay. So say, for instance, if I'm understanding things correctly, if the state says we're going to get 100,000, we count on 75.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And especially, I mean, don't forget what the revenue sharing is made up of, is the sales tax and income tax and a percentage of that. So, with the recession and some of those other expenditures and increases in cost of living, revenue sharing tends to shrink a little bit in those types of environments.
Understood. Thank you. Councillor Scott.
Thank you. So just a couple of questions, because I didn't know what they were, and that was on page 15, the payment in lieu of Fry School, Tedford House, just those last three, I just didn't know what they were.
Yep. A pilot or a payment in lieu of taxes is part of an agreement with a nonprofit. So technically, a nonprofit is not required to pay taxes. But in certain development agreements, we have built in what's known as a pilot or a payment in lieu of that. So we are getting some income for those, and those represent the pilots in those agreements.
Okay, thank you.
Just out of pure curiosity, where is Mariner Tower?
Do you know, Brian? I thought it was is the Applesauce Hill? Huh?
Yes, I believe that's.
Yeah, I think that it's the Applesauce Hill Tower.
Yes, on top of Pleasant Street.
Okay.
For those people that are not, Pleasant Street
Take
up
a
at the
left
top.
Yeah.
Tower, yes.
That's what I recall, but if you ask me beyond where it is after that, that's about all I know.
That will be sufficient. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on revenue? All right, I would invite the Elaine Brackett, the Social Services Director, to come up and join me as we review the social service budget that starts on page 66. So on page 66, you will see the social services, and it's split between two different divisions. One's admin and one's the actual benefits issued to eligible clients. So they had an overall decrease of $4,468 or 0.5%. The admin budget, and we might as well jump into that, increased by $49,464 or 20.6%. General assistance for a number of years has had one of their caseworkers funded with community development block grant money. In FY21, let me get this right here. Yeah, FY21 was the last fiscal year that CDBG was going to be paying for that additional caseworker position. Because at that point, given the number of years, it was considered supplanting versus actually supplementing and wasn't changing impacts on low mod benefits and all that good stuff. However, then we CDBG received CARES funding. And with the additional CARES funding and recognizing the activity within the General Assistance Office, they were able to fund it in the current fiscal year, FY22, with CARES funding. That CARES funding goes away in FY23. That's why you're seeing such a significant jump in the admin, because we are now on general fund picking up that that additional caseworker position. So of the $49,000 increase, it's all in salaries because of that case worker. If you look at contractual services, it's relatively flat. They had an overall decrease in postage. And then if you look at supplies, you had a small increase in office supplies. So, clearly that addition or that add back of the base wages for that position has significantly impacted that division. If you look at the second component, the general assistance categories that you'll see below there, That's what the state reimburses 70% for. So they have an overall decrease here of anticipated needs of 54,000 or 8.4%. We had a $2,000 increase in contractual services. We have, with offsetting increase in burial costs, offset by a decrease in utilities. Supplies decreased by $16,000, and 15 of that was in food. And then the other remaining $1,000 was predicted in medical. And then the biggest part of the decrease is in rent. And that's anticipated to fall by about $50,000. And that's offset by an increase in temporary housing of $10,000. So between the two, the net effect is $40,000. So that's what we're anticipating going into FY23 based upon the trends that we are seeing at this juncture. Questions on general assistance? Oh, you got APC. You're all set.
We're easy on you tonight.
Thank you.
Did you, what?
So
Councilor
close.
LaChapelle?
So close. You stayed there just too long. You should
Should've
have
moved
ran.
it quick.
You should have ran. A quick question. How many people does that equate to, that dollar amount for general assistance?
Are you looking at this current fiscal year?
Excuse me, Director Brackett, can you please pull the microphone closer and speak into it? Thank you.
Yes, we're looking at 23. What are we projecting? Or what is it in 22, this fiscal year?
From July 1 of last year up until today, actually, we have assisted 205 unduplicated cases. If you're looking at the office traffic, we have seen 1,632 individuals, or cases, I should say.
Is that up from 21?
We have 3 more months, so I would say it's probably going to be about the same.
Are you projecting the same level for 23?
With the housing, I've reduced that budget because the main housing does have the emergency rental assistance program, which a lot of people, when you apply for general assistance, we do place mandates and requirements on folks. And for those that are unable or just simply don't want to follow through with those mandates, they can turn to the main housing emergency rental assistance program, which guidelines are much higher than general assistance. And that's what we've been finding. That's the reason for the reduction in housing,
So they didn't want to do what we requested them to do, so
in order to be self-sufficient.
so they moved to, they didn't
A
have to do
program with no
anything.
mandates, correct.
Mandates.
Yep,
Okay. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your service, Director Brackett.
So the next budget is the library budget, and I was going to say, we'll bring up Marcela Perez, the library director. I'm sorry, 72. So we have an overall increase in the library of $60,752, which is a 5.5% increase. The first division is the library admin position that had an overall increase of $7,300, or 5.1%. About half of that is in personal services. So that increased about $3,800. The other half is in contractual services. We had some minor fluctuation between accounts, but again, as you saw with other general funds, mileage increased by about $1,100. That's that training and travel that we've seen in other departments. We have repairs to equipment that also increased by about $1,800. We are looking at new copier contracts. So this amount is the estimate for the new copier contracts, the replacement of the copier. And we have supplies that had a small increase of $200 for office supplies, just based upon usage and pricing. The lending division had an overall increase of $28,554, or 5.11%. And again, the bulk of that is in personal services. That increased by $26,328, of which $45,000 represents an increase in regular wages. And that's because we converted a part-time position to a full-time position based upon the ability and capacity needs to fill that. We were able to offset that with halfway with temporary wages. So temporary wages dropped by about $18,700. And any other fluctuation with temporary wages based upon COLAs and minimum wage. Contractual services in this division is flat. We have an increase of $2,200 in supplies, and that is just minor book budget increases based upon pricing. You traditionally are not adding to the quantity, it's just the cost of the books at this point. On page 73, the collection services, that had an increase of $6,280, or 3.2%. Of that amount, $780 was in personal services. Regular wages comprised of $4,900, and then the balance, just under $1,000, was in temporary wages. Contractual services are flat. And then we had a $500 increase in supplies, and again, that's that office supply account. And the last division is the library building on the bottom of page 73. Had an overall increase of $18,600, or 9%. We had an increase of $1,500 and the cross-charging of PW support for the library services, so that's why the personal services increased. The balance is in contractual services. Again, like you saw in the other building accounts, we had $11,000 increase in utilities. Now that we're reopening the building, that impacts not only the utilities, but also the cleaning. So we had another $7,700 increase in cleaning. Hopefully we can start doing Callanhan Hall events and some of that other stuff. And that was tempered slightly by a decrease in repairs to buildings. And then supplies decreased by about $200 there, so some fluctuation in the household supplies. But that's pretty much all there is to the library. It's personal services for the most part.
How many books are in the library's collection?
About 150,000.
Councilor Jelinas?
Thank you. Just confirm for me, so under account 402501, where we see a decrease of 53%, you're saying that those got moved to 411,000? Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, what, are you looking under the 452?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Okay, so they just got flipped into a different line. It's not like we decreased
No.
staff. I mean, I think this is a reasonable budget given, I mean, you know, during COVID, we spent so much time not really open, so thinking about full steam ahead, right? This is great. Thank you.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What are the hours of operation at the library?
Monday through Thursday, we're open 10 to 7, and then Friday and Saturday, 10 to 5.
Saturday, 10 to 5. What, have you had a way to track how many people come in and out of the library?
We do. We have a door counter.
Excellent. What are those numbers?
I hesitate to say right now because we've been bouncing back from COVID levels. We only reopened fully in August, but generally speaking, it was between 300 and 400 a day.
300 to 400 a day?
Yes.
How many, do you know if the percentage of repeat people?
We don't track that.
What is, I was just looking down to adult audio and visual. What is that?
So that includes CDs, audiobooks, DVDs,
What kind of DVDs?
entertainment, but also documentaries, nonfiction DVDs.
So I can go pick up Die Hard at
Yes.
the library and watch that?
It does incur a $1 charge, but yes, we do.
So I'm assuming the children's audiovisual is the same thing there? Okay, thank you.
Now I understand that the library has an online component, as most libraries do these days. And I can only assume that utilization has gone up since the start of the pandemic, or can you shed some light on that, please?
Yes, it has. I would say the ebooks and audiobooks especially that we pay into, that has gone up, has almost doubled throughout the pandemic. So ebook and audiobook usage is up, but actually the funds that we use to pay for ebooks and audiobooks is out of the library's endowment, so it's not reflected here.
Councilor LaChapelle?
Thank you. One follow-up question. Are you tied in any way to all the school libraries? Do all the librarians start talking, or
Oh, yes.
is there coordinated effort and
Yes, especially in programming.
programming?
So we work pretty closely with the librarians at the elementary schools, middle, and high school.
Okay, thank you.
When will Callanhan Hall be available to rent? Because I understand somebody could rent that, right?
It is actually available now.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be a decreased usage while I'm on maternity leave, just due to capacity from staff. But once I'm back in July, it should be completely open to rental from the public. And that is one of our revenue lines.
I was going to say we charge for that, correct?
We do.
Okay, thank you.
So Marcella, before you leave, do you want to make a plug for the book reading that the children's librarian is?
Front
Oh, sure.
desk.
I did hear that Councilor Jelinek is participating.
I sure did. Sarah is wonderful. What a
Yes.
wonderful asset she is to the library. She came to Sandcastle Clinical and Educational Services and probably captured 10 different photos of people reading. So she's working that project hard, and we were delighted to be asked, so thank you.
Yes, she came over, I think the admin was today, or later this week. I saw her floating around the office, so she's done the fire station.
I think she has PD lined up. She's been
Yes.
running around town.
So it's a
She may
great,
circle back to some of you, but
yeah, it's a great promotional opportunity,
Yeah.
so.
And for our audience at home, it's Front Desk by Kelly Yang, correct?
yes.
Excellent, thank you.
And the hope is to make it an intergenerational effort so that we have families reading together, we have people from all walks of the community reading together, and just a positive thing that we can all do together, especially when we've been kind of so separated recently.
I would like to be on the record as already having purchased the book, and I will start reading it very soon.
Thank you.
Further questions from the council? Thank you for your efforts, Director Perez.
So, page 74, we'll talk about debt service. I know, like, my favorite topic here. We have an overall decrease here of $32,649, or 0.4%, and both of these amounts include the most recent March 2nd bond sale. So principal increase about $19,550, and that was offset by a decrease of about $52,000 in interest on outstanding. Again, just as a reminder for the council and even for the viewing audience, we have an 80% debt limit, and it requires a supermajority vote of 5 on the city council to waive that debt limit. We've had 4 instances since it's been approved where we have exceeded it. 3 of those 4 were for school projects and in conjunction with the fire substation and with the 911 radio replacement. We continue with our most recent bond sale. In 5 years, we will pay off 52% of our debt. And in 10 years, we're looking at paying off 76% of our debt. So those are numbers that when I first started here, we were not keeping that pace. So it's made a huge difference, not only from the rating agency, but also on our ability to finance some of these capital projects in future. I will say, we've reduced the interest by about $34 million, or 47.7% since our peak, between refundings and just the environment and so forth. So when we do refundings, and we're one of the, I can't say we're one of the few municipalities that do refundings, but not all municipalities do refundings. And refundings is just like refinancing your mortgage. You're refinancing from a higher rate to a lower rate. And in the last 12 years, we've been able to save $11.6 million on doing that. That's 2 fire substations.
Good job.
So, I mean, it's definitely a great tool when you're looking at it. So, economic development is one of these categories on page 75 that kind of ebbs and flows throughout the various budget years. Initially, what we do is start out with requests in this, and most of these requests get moved to fund balance. We have 2 such projects that were requested that were moved to fund balance. One is the steam plant at the Bates Mill. Part of the agreement with the developer there is to buy the steam plant. When we bill out steam to the various tenants, it includes capital reserve to, if for something were to happen to the steam plant, there's a reserve in place, kind of like a rainy day fund, if you will. We need to turn that, part of the agreement is we need to return that, or revert that reserve fund to the developer once we transfer the ownership of the steam plant. During the rather lean years of the Great Recession, the general fund couldn't afford to subsidize the steam plant, so we used some of that reserve to cover normal operations. We're slowly replenishing that. They have a new person that's in charge of the steam plant in Mill 5 and the complex. I am trying to get an updated number of what that reserve is, because we've had to do some capital investment in the steam plant the last 2 fiscal years. So that request from general fund may get to be decreased based upon that. The other request that was made is $250,000 to set up and establish an economic development reserve fund. Part of your strategic plan, we talked about creating something on general fund available to bridge financing gaps for those organizations that were doing improvements that may not qualify for some of the stringent requirements that surround CDBG and so forth. So this starts that process in setting up that reserve fund. Once we get money there, kind of phase 2 of that process would be outlining how you want that program to work. In what cases would we tap that fund? And would it be tapped as a grant? Would it be tapped as a loan, or to revolve a little bit with an interest rate? That's the next phase of that piece of that. So now we'll move on to the intergovernmental. We've already talked about 911. I would like to bring up James Schiller. He's the new airport director. If you would join me up here.
76.
So, James, you've been on the job how many months now?
9 weeks.
So he's at a kind of a disadvantage from a budget standpoint, where he inherited the budget. The temporary manager had done some of the budget work. He had completed the other. So I think it's a good overall kind of status quo with a few initiatives sprinkled in there to kind of get his feet wet at the overall airport. We're looking at an increase of about $449,000 in revenue, and the lion's share of that is in the increase in fuel sales. You know, just as you're seeing at the pump, prices of gasoline and so forth have increased. So not only will the revenues increase, but when you look at the FBO, you'll see an overall corresponding cost increase as the wholesale price of that fuel has increased as well. We have some minor fluctuations in like an association fees. He is looking at changing some of the landing fees and other increases. So we're looking at a little bit of a uptick in landing fees, about $10,000 or a little less than that. And then we do have, or he has budgeted a one-time sale of capital assets for $46,000. So that's, hopefully that will be recouped in other investments next year, so we don't have to make up that gap locally. Operating expenditures are looking at increasing about $515,000. Personal services rose by just shy of about $49,000. He's doing a couple reorganizations, structuring some technicians to supervisors, and then looking at making a position for special projects, a permanent position, which would free that position up to do some more strategic planning initiatives that was not necessarily available to the former airport director. Operations and maintenance rose by about $7,200. Got some work in electrical for about $4,000. We're looking at upgrading a lot of the computer systems there for about $11,000. Their upgrades to Microsoft and so forth have not been done recently, so we need to make sure that happens. And then we're also looking at about $2,500 in vehicle maintenance. In this case, vehicle maintenance for the airport includes all types of equipment. So it includes mower decks, as well as trucks and so forth. With the recent paving of some of the runways, we have a decrease in airfield maintenance of about $8,600 and contractual work of about $5,800. In the current year, we had budgeted for an oil and water separator. That was a one-time this year activity. It would not be repeated for the future years. And we are looking at increasing administration, which includes the audit function with the airport and the amount of federal money they get. They have to do what's known as a A133 audit and testing. That adds an additional cost to the annual audit. They get audited in conjunction with the city of Auburn, and they're on the city of Auburn's bid for that service. Likewise, we also have some increases in advertising to kind of improve the marketing of the airport. And like I said, the FBO expenditures increased by $529,000 or $530,000. That, I think the lion's share is in fuel cost, and that we have some small fluctuations in personal service, but the bulk of that increase is in fuel cost. And then we are having a restaurant.
Yes.
You want to talk about the restaurant?
Okay, so tomorrow night is the airport board meeting, and there will be attending Dan Callanhan, who's the founder of Thursday. The 31st, and Dan Callanhan and his son Dustin, who will be starting their franchise. It's going to be called the Cheesy Skillet, and their first franchise is going to be right there at the airport, and we're really excited to have him. Like I said, he founded the Green Ladle, so he's a big part of this community. He's done a lot of great things for the veterans and also the homeless, and so to have him on board is great. And one reason why he's taken on the airport restaurant is because of how I explained the growth of the airport is going to explode under my watch here. There's a lot to unravel with the airport, and as Heather was explaining some of the increased cost, and the keyword she used there one time was a one-time cost. There's untapped revenue that I'm going to be in charge of, and make this place a more commercial, airline-friendly airport, and have those charter flights. It's there. You have a part, right now you have a general aviation airport, but it's right around the corner of being a Part 139, which is a commercial service airport. We have Elite Airways. It's a Part 121 commercial carrier. If we just prepare the airport, get the security system up, put a little revenue into the airport. Airlines like that have those regional jets will use this airport as a boutique commercial service airport. It's right there. You have the runway space, and it's just a little coordination, a little bit of money. But a lot of the costs this year are going to be one-time costs. One thing I will be introducing to the board on Thursday night is flight instruction, Part 141 ground school instruction, something that's long overdue for this airport. People have told me that, you know, since the day I walked in, I think 15 minutes I was on the job, and I had one of the board members say, there's flight schools just want to get here. Well, the University of Maine at Auburn, the person who does their aviation coordinator, Greg Jolby, he says, James, if you purchase this particular flight simulator, we can partner with you and we can have our college students here, and it's certified with the FAA, this flight simulator. The investment is very brief. The ROI is within less than 2 years. And the annual revenue just on low projections is about $62,000 a year for the airport. And also generating non-aeronautical revenue, like using some of that property for parking, you know, long-term parking. If people need to store their RVs, boats, I mean, there's revenue there. So this is what I'm looking at. We only have, and another thing I'm looking at, if we only have one hangar it's clean enough. It's called, it's the FBO hangar, has some heat in it. It's a nice clean floor. We have another hangar that really needs to be rehabbed. So I'll be introducing that on Thursday to rehab that hangar for just a fraction of what it would take to even build a hangar, and then make that a viable place to have more based aircraft. We, as a reliever airport, and part of the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems, our based aircraft is very low. We have about 46 based aircraft. 100 based aircraft is what the FAA considers to be a reliever airport in our number of operations. This restaurant, going back to it, is going to drive production. It's going to drive fuel sales. It's going to drive based aircraft at our airport. Landing fees are going to go up. I am adjusting rates to move with the market, and as the FAA going under their guidance, we just can't give it away for free. Just can't be a good old pilot, you know, airport. It has to be a business, self revenue generating airport. And I hope that next time when I come back here next year, we'll be asking for a little bit lower. So I hope that helps. And I'll take any questions.
When do you get the flight simulator?
Yes, sir. Probably right after the 31st. I know they're going to jump right on it. The board will. But the amount has not been budgeted. Like I said, I've been here for 9 weeks, and this opportunity was something in the past 5 weeks I was thinking about, but just putting all the right players at the table and coming up with the correct simulator was the objective, and here we are. So it's about $58,000 for the simulator. That includes all the training, the startup fees, all the support package, and there you go. So it could happen this year. It could happen in August if you want, but I'd like to get it before the next school year, because this simulator, we could actually integrate it with the high schools, their aviation program, the Civil Air Patrol, and we have many pilots that are in the condos down there, you know, they call the hangar condos, that they would use this simulator for their own flight instruction. And the program for the Redbird simulator, like I said, it's certified with the FAA. So anybody who wants to learn to fly, they could download, register with the Redbird, have their little iPad, and work with a flight instructor, and stay on the syllabus with the Redbird system. And then once they become proficient at the simulator, many of these students are able just to get into the aircraft and take off. It's the landing that they have a whole problem with, according to, but that's how proficient it is. So, I hope that, yeah.
I think having a ground school would be really exciting.
Yes, sir.
Further questions from the council? Councilor Jelinas.
I just want to welcome you aboard, Director. And my last term, I served on the airport board, and it's exciting to hear you speak of revenue potential, flight school, the cheesy skillet, all of that. So
Coming back from the flight community is that they get a better deal, they get better service at the other airports. It doesn't take as many steps to fuel up, and I don't know, I'm not a pilot or anything like that, but I would just mention those things as things that I hear as somebody who's not even connected with the airport. I'd hope you'd look into them, and next time we come around, we have some glowing reports of things that have changed there, because it is an overlooked operation, I think. It is something that will help the growth of the area if it's done correctly, and what more can we say?
I agree, Counselor, and.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Pease.
My basic question is it going to be open to the public to utilize?
Yes, sir.
So, and it'll be a course set up,
Yes, sir.
and you have to do each of the steps. And of course, you don't have any idea what the cost is right now because you haven't done it yet. But
The cost for what, sir?
to learn how to fly.
The simulator?
Oh, the simulator, it will, per hour for the simulator, be $60 to $70 an hour. And of course, I would entertain a student rate, especially for the high school, and like that, but
Good. Thank you.
you're welcome, sir.
Councillor LaChapelle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Welcome. Like our Stephanie Gelinas, I was on the board for 3 years in the Auburn area, on the board of directors, so I'm very familiar with some of the stuff. One of the questions I have, and I know I don't want to get into naming names, but delinquency in rent payments, how is that coming along? Because there was a major problem with somebody. Is that still an issue?
Well, you shake the tree hard enough, the apples fall, and the apples are slowly falling, and that's, I know exactly what you're talking about, but
We
it's.
got to the verge multiple times, and I'm at the point, throw them out. I'd rather have nothing there than have something there that's costing me money. That was one of my concerns on it. Okay, so that's at the top of your list, I'm assuming, because that's a lion's share of the profit coming in for that facility.
Oh, yes, sir. I've already handled it personally.
Okay.
And spoken to their top corporate office. And,
I'm sure you're the
yeah,
third or
yeah.
fourth person that's talked to the top.
yeah, it's-
And I guess I'm at a point, I'm done talking to the top.
Okay.
Ship up or ship out, really, we could use it for something else.
Yes, sir.
How is the new self-serving fuel setup working? Because I know that was a concern previously with other people coming in, if they're landing late and we didn't have staff, you can go over and fuel up yourself, and that was supposed to be a big, at least a couple of years ago, that was supposed to be a big push for that airport, and it was going to be helpful.
Okay, so the self-serve is still underway. We have an estimated price that I got from the same company who installed our larger one, which was Lake Regions Environmental. That is on the discussion. We have an actual self-serve fuel committee to go out there and find a spot on that tarmac that will, we should place about a 2,000-gallon self-serve tank. We already have the most expensive piece of equipment for this self-serve, which is the credit card reader. And now the other part of the self-serve is the guidance for distribution of 100 low lead fuel. It used to be we could sell it to anybody. Now the state has come down and said it can only be for aircraft or vehicles being used in sanctioned races. So we have to verify, so we just cannot leave the open gate anymore on this. So with the self-serve, 24 hours, I'm going to have to incorporate a whole new security plan. That'll be more of the SIDA badge, which will be a display, security display area that you would see around the airports. And people would have to code in whatever, if we give a race, a particular race, a code, they would have to put that code in, but they would have to have access to that. And
Wasn't that budgeted into a few years ago?
Let's just say the first phase was done, and we needed a second phase because there was some planning glitches.
That's very politically correct.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Further comments from the council? I need to be kept updated on the flight simulator, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Mayor. Thank you.
We appreciate I'm sorry, your name again, sir.
James Scheller.
Thank you.
See you Thursday.
Thank you, Mayor.
Jennifer Williams from AvCog is joining us regarding the LA Transit Committee. And that is also part of the Intergovernmental Revenues. I'm pleased to say we had an overall decrease here of $173,000. One thing I will share with the council and especially with the new counselors, 2 years ago you got essentially enough CARES money that allowed for all of the operations to be funded through CARES. At the time that they received that, we already had transit subsidy money budgeted in the current budget. So what we were able to do, and then there was some even carry forward money to the next year, we were able to encumber that money, knowing that if we budgeted for nothing, that would be a huge spike in the future years. So we've slowly carried forward a portion of that reserve that we've used. So we are looking at using $121,000 for the next 2 years, and that kind of mitigates that peak that we were going to have after the CARES money was used up. So, and what you see in the operating budget reflects that carry forward request. And you will see it differs from the supporting documentation that was passed out because of that carry forward. So you were able to reconcile those two. So non-subsidy revenue increased by $115,000. That reflects the increase in federal funding, about $102,000, and then fare box revenue of an additional $15,000. Fixed route costs had an increase of $210,000. The bulk of that is in the Western Main Transit's operating contract of just shy of $55,000, and then they have a preventive maintenance contract that includes about $14,664 increase, and then fuel, that four-letter word that we've all been seeing across the budgets that is impacting everywhere. That's an additional $57,000 for the transit. Additionally, that is staff supported by Androscoggin County Valley of Governments, if I got that order right. We're looking at about an $85,000 increase there because they are now reaching that kind of capacity issue that they're adding a staff person with that. Parrot Paratransit, which is another category, that has a small increase of about $2,900. And again, that's all related to the Western Main Transit contract. And then the last piece of this budget is the actual bus station and then the operating costs associated with that. That had a $4,700 increase. That's on the second page if you're looking at the handouts. We have an increase of $2,500 in janitorial cost and then about a $1,000 increase in utilities. So that kind of summarizes the transit budget from a budgetary standpoint. Not a lot of significant fluctuations that don't mirror what we've seen elsewhere. Do you have anything you want to add?
The only thing I want to add, and I don't have a lot of details yet, but AvCog did apply for additional funding through the Rescue Plan Act, and we were successful in receiving close to $400,000 in Rescue Plan Act funds for transit, which will offset roughly 2 months of operating expenses for FY23. That's not reflected in the budget we presented because we've just received this information and we're still waiting for guidance from FTA.
So once we know that, hopefully that will be part of the proposed budget adjustments to bring forward to the City Council.
Councilor Scott.
Thank you. So do we know how many people roughly use the bus on a regular basis?
I thought of that as I got here. I don't have those numbers with me. What I do know is, and I can pull ridership information together and forward it. Last time I really looked closely, LATC ridership was back to roughly 70 to 75% of pre-pandemic levels. And I did just get an email this morning that as of today, we have reached the same ridership for the entire month of February, and it's equal operating days. So March of this year is probably going to be highest ridership since at least October. So numbers are picking back up.
So if I might, can I ask you a crazy question? Because this is a thought that's been going through my head. Do you have capacity to put high school students back on that bus and take buses away from the school to save money on the school budget?
Ooh.
I'm just throwing that out there.
Yep. That's a trickier one because of the scheduling
Yeah.
and the routes. So I can't give you a solid yes or a no. It's something that comes up often and we look at. And I know the question has come up throughout the year from both Lewiston and Auburn, kind of at the same time that we were also dealing with driver shortages and having to
Right.
scale back a little bit too. We can continue looking at it, but that's really all I can give you for an answer right now on it.
You're open for a conversation?
What's that?
You said you're open for a conversation to look into it?
Open for the conversation,
All right,
yes.
thanks, Jen.
You're welcome.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. This kind of goes to driver shortage. It's been all over the news, and some of these contracted rides are canceled on a daily basis because of driver shortage. I'm wondering if there's any talk of integrating within the budget, or maybe some of the Rescue Plan Act funds could be used when we think about like recruiting and trying to get people on board, right? I mean, people that are hiring have to do all sorts of crazy things to get people to come to work. And I don't know if there's room in this, if that's been considered, but it's a huge issue. I mean, it's one thing to have all this, but at the end of the day, if the services aren't happening, because we don't have drivers, right? So I don't know if that's been spoken of.
Not to that level. It's an interesting dynamic because it's the Lewiston and Auburn own the system and own the fixed route buses, but contract out for all operations, maintenance, the drivers, dispatchers, customer service. That contract is with Western Maine. One thing they have done is, I think it's the Region 9 Technical Center. They've worked with them on some of the educational pieces for the CDL drivers and to get the passenger endorsements. So they're doing a lot of that. With the Rescue Plan Act funds, it's strictly operational expenses, so I'm not even sure if any type of training or recruitment could be eligible. There's been a lot of leeway, but at the same time, it is really geared towards operating to keep the system going, which if you don't have the drivers, so like I said, we're waiting for more information on guidance on how to apply the funds that we're receiving for you.
Thank you. Just kind of like sign-on bonuses have become part of our operating expenses, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions from the council? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
The last budget that falls under the intergovernmental is the county budget. You will see as part of the tax rate summary sheet and the budget memo that I prepared, and I think we even talked about it during the initial budget presentation. There's an overall increase of $145,679 on the county budget. That represents a 4.8% increase. That increase alone is 6 cents on the tax rate. And we are locked in. I got the bill today for next year already. They send it in advance just so we know what our amount is. So unfortunately, that's not a lot we can do about other than, those individuals that from our community that serve on the budget committee and so forth. So Mr. Mayor, that's all I have from a budget review for tonight.
I appreciate that, Administrator Hunter. May I have a motion for our executive session? Yes, okay. Councillor LaChapelle, followed by Councillor Pease. We'll be moving to an executive session to discuss real estate negotiations. Thank you, everyone.